Divine All Blessed. Today I want to talk about a topic that is somewhat controversial, and controversial topics and subject matter are not new to the Divine Prince, of course. But in my opinion, and I'm sure many of you may agree with me, it is a very, um, it's not talked about often. It's a very underdeveloped, under-discussed, underexplored region of not just voodoo, but animistic spiritual practices throughout the diaspora. And I could probably spend the next 2 hours, which I won't do. I tend to digress anyway. So I'm not going to digress in terms of why I believe this discussion is not happening, though I will hit it at certain points throughout my video as it relates to staying on focus, staying on topic. And what I want to talk about is spirit possession. Spirit possession in Voodoo, in Hoodoo, in Obia, in Ifa, Lukumi, Santeria, Sanse, Palo, I dare say any animistic, Orisha, Loa, deity-based, African-based system, to include Kemet, Egypt, involved a great deal of spirit possession. Now, part of why we don't discuss spirit possession is modernization and the present day state of culture. And that can, again, why I earlier said that it would take a long time to go into that. We would have to look at the effects of Christianity and Islam, the effects of science, the effects of television and cinema and movie and all of these things as they relate to our perception, our belief or disbelief, our ideal of what that is and how that operates. For some of you, you probably don't see that at all. You probably don't see that outside of the movies, outside of television. But it is quite alive, quite real, quite pertinent to the practice of many Africans throughout the diaspora. And this includes evangelical Christians who rely a great deal on spirit possession. Now, one of the first basic separations I'm going to make is about that. The tendency within the church is to limit spirit possession to a very familiar form, a very familiar representation, even from church to church. Even if you experience it in the Pentecostal, and then you experience it in the Apostolic, and then you experience it in the Baptist. Not all Baptists shout and speak in tongue and provide space for spirit possession. One of the signs of that is I call it the circle, when the uniformed ushers, and that's probably a correlation I will make, is that often you will see the circle in the churches that have uniformed ushers, uniformed nurses. And there tends to be an order, which I'm going to discuss at length a little later in the video, about the order of spirit possession. It is not random. It is not chaos. I dare say it is not spontaneous. It is something that is called. It is something that is invoked. But to use words like control, I would have to draw a line. It is not something that can be totally controlled or contained, but it has an order. It has a formula. And we're going to get into individual spirits, but I want to start at a basic level that maybe we all can relate to. The uniformed churches Some of them are Baptist, some of them are African Methodist, some of them are evangelical, but it's rare to see white uniformed, I think, as much in some of the evangelical churches of today, outside of the nurses and maybe the usher board. But they will often fill that role of the circle, and they will join hands, and the person who um, appears to be manifesting spirit in any way is encircled. They're often fanned, with the church fan. They might try to give you water, almost treated as if you were having a conniption of some sort that they need to stop before it is allowed to develop. It is allowed to progress. As you get into the more evangelical systems, apostolic, Pentecostal, some now would even say non-denominational, that still practice spirit possession. Um, you may see a more broader range of how that is allowed to manifest itself, but there are still some controls. And when I talk about controls, it is important to understand the nature of spirit possession, what it is, what its purpose is, what is it to fulfill in the spiritual religious practice. Um, what is the point? And I'm going to start by saying that it is about tapping spirit. It is about crossing planes, crossing dimensions, opening a doorway, if you will, into spiritual space and allowing for communication between realms that would otherwise not provide that type of communication in our normal, everyday, waking existence. Another example of that is our dream state. Spirit, spirit realm, spirit travel, spirit experience, spirit lesson and learning can happen in the dream state, often in a much safer way than living that out in physical reality. But yet, it's still about communication with spirit. Spirit possession takes that experience to another level and brings that contact directly into the center of the sacred space. And in order to cover this topic, we're going to have to talk about sacred space. Uh, Spirit possession and the presence of spirit. Spirit can be housed, tureens, pots, um, all the various implements that we are aware of in Yoruba, Ifa, Lukumi, Santeria, Palo, Ngangas, things that we use to house spirit. There are implements like the horse tail iroke, the fly whisk, uh, the obeya, which I had in my hand in my last video, um, figurines, carvings, implements that spirit, and usually, as with Mami Wata, specific spirits have been conferred upon. So again, when we talk about spirit possession, depending on the arena where this phenomenon is taking place, there's going to be a focus on a particular energy. Church folks might call it the Holy Ghost. They might say Spirit of God, and they may be hypersensitive to the presence, to the awareness of something that comes through that is unfamiliar to them. And generally speaking, that will be shut down in those churches. I have been in the presence of speaking in tongue where the bishop was able to translate what was being said, and he felt that it was not of spirit or was not coming from a spirit that we needed to hear from. Um, it would be too much for me to assume much more about what his inner process was, but just based on his response, that was shut down. But when you come into Hoodoo, Ifa, Santeria, now where does that take place? The spirit is conferred, Ashe, power, Ilatsi is conferred upon an implement, an item, a shrine, a stone, if you will, a pot, if you will. But there's a way to call spirit. Quite frequently in Voodoo, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, Ghana, and the Akan, you're going to see a voodoo bell. And many of you who have been following me for some time have seen that and may have noticed me focusing on that, particularly in documentation, because I wanted to first give people an understanding of the importance of it as a tool, as an implement in voodoo. We will also talk about performance, sacred space, sacred ceremony. There has to be an understanding. There has to be a line drawn somewhere. In the scope of modern day society, many cultures around the world, not just in Africa, not just in India, not just in South America, but even here in New Orleans, this has become a part of the economic base. It has become a part of culture. It has become a part of tourism. It has become a part of history. So there is a sense of ownership, if you will, at a communal level that I think sometimes affects how we interpret and how we define within the moment what sacred space is. Having said that, you're not going to very often see real spirit possession take place in a public forum, especially a public forum where there is no controls, especially a public forum where there are no protocols put into place. And when dealing with forces of this nature, powerful forces of any type, you even treat your ammonia and your bleach with respect. Your rubbing alcohol, especially if you have children, if you have pets, you treat those things with a certain level of respect because we have a minimal, basic understanding of their power, of their strength, of their volatility. So spirit possession is often treated in that way. And when we specify specific forces, there might be colors, there might be particular libations, there might be particular herbs, there might be particular products, implements that are specific to that force, to that deity. Dantor, if you are familiar in the Haitian voodoo tradition, is often going to come through at some point. A flag or a tie is going to be wrapped on her somewhere in her colors. She may already come in as a practitioner with her colors on, but as the possession takes place, certain implements would be given to her, and she's going to have a knife, and she's going to point it at her heart, or she's going to point it in an implement, in a spiritual tool, weapon, wand, scepter. It's kind of hard to translate these spiritual implements into Western English conceptual words. It is a weapon, but it is also a spiritual implement that is used to channel, house and channel, and direct outwardly, whether it's through a blessing in a ritual process, but it's going to be used as a part of the spirit possession process. So when a particular deity does come through, depending on the path, and there are specifics to various paths where particular implements are going to be more prevalent in a particular path than in another, but there's going to be an order. There's going to be implements, and there's going to be a protocol. And a part of the protocol is about, now we're getting into control. Even when we house a spirit in a pot, in a wand, in an implement, in a stone, we have certain protocol that we adhere to activate, to acknowledge, to awaken, if you will, our interaction with that spirit. Why do we do that? Why don't we just approach deity with dirty hands? Why do we clean ourselves first? Why do we purify? Why do we prepare our space? Why do we follow those rituals, those protocols? And that leads us to another place of understanding about the force, the power, the volatility of some of these things that we're working with. Respect. There's a basic level of respect that has to be applied when dealing with spirit, and particularly spirit possession. Spirit possession invokes the thinking of human contact, surrendering ourselves to allow a force to enter us. It's not a performance. It's not something you can practice. It's not something you learn to do. It's not something that you can turn off or turn on, provided there are certain protocols. A spirit may leave in the presence of certain protocols. A spirit can get stronger in the presence of certain protocols. A spirit can get aggressive in the presence of certain protocols. And this does not begin or end with your ceremony. It is a part of a lifestyle, being a channel, being a practitioner that allows for channeling, allows for spirit possession, requires sacrifice, requires training, requires allowing ourselves a certain level of vulnerability that we may not allow for because of ego in our conscious, everyday, active, waking state. I have been to tarot. Let me look at this at another way. The length of many of these ceremonies that I've been to where actual spirit possession took place cannot be overlooked. The average Haitian voodoo ceremony can go on at best all night. 4 or 5 in the afternoon, people begin to gather. Sun is coming up. People may very well still be in the temple. People may very well still be in singing mode. People may still be drumming. People may still be in the act of active possession. A Western view of that is the evangelical presence. In a powerful service, I've seen spirit follow people to the parking lot. I've seen people on their drive home have to pull over and regain themselves. We don't own spirit. We don't control them. They're not. It is not the same as working with demonic spirits in witchcraft, where there is a calling, a invoking, circles drawn and spaces bound to protect and to create magical space. And then you get these imps, if you will, to sort of do your bidding. And then you send them, merrily on their way. However, it is akin to that, in that there are rules, there are regulations, there are things that these various spirits require, and they cannot be ultimately controlled. they can be cooperative, and we can cooperate with spirit individually as well as collectively, um, in terms of spirit possession. But it is not in any way something that we sort of put on for and have some ego in the process. Um, Indeed, one of the signs of true spirit possession is the loss of ego. Um, Another sign of true spirit possession is a selflessness that cannot be contained. It's almost kinetic, but in a very energetic way. You know, even now as I talk about all the hairs on my body are just standing up, I can feel the static charge in the room, from just connecting with the purity of that spirit, uh, even in thought. So the magnitude of that, as it is demonstrated in spirit possession, cannot be understated. And this is why many of these traditions that do manifest this type of practice have armor bearers and assistants who are well trained in the routine of spirit possession. Even the Misa Blanc has an order to it that allows for liberal connection with spirit, but also respect, humility, and protection. You're literally opening up a vortex, a doorway, a portal, if you will, um, to a realm that even the deepest spiritualists, even the most well-versed physicists and scientists, doesn't have a drop of knowledge of. So it's not something that we should play with, if you will. And it's a very deep and complex topic that I cannot by any means address in just one video. So I will be forward with more about spirit possession, and particularly spirit possession in voodoo, hoodoo, obia, which are probably, say the evangelicals, it's probably some of the strongest representations we have in the West, of the continuation of this practice. There are many more layers, like an onion, to this topic that I want to address moving forward, remembering that all is truly and indeed a blessing. Ashe.